Last night, one of my good friends was bitten in the hand pretty badly by her own dog. In fact, this was a dog that she adopted from our Humane Society, Second Chance at Love, about 2 years ago. She's encouraged me to tell the story, and that's what I'm going to do. So this dog is a Chow. It's not her first Chow. She actually adopted a Chow from me several years ago who lived out a long and very fulfilled life. He did develop a few issues as he got older, but they were able to manage it and live around those issues, and he did live a wonderful life. So what I did when I adopted this second Chow to her, I know that she's very drawn to this breed, but I did want to remind her that this is a very dominant breed, that Chows are not necessarily as pack-driven as some other dogs might be. They kind of have a stoic personality. Some people are really drawn to that breed. I have an Akita myself, so I understand the attraction there, but I also understand that those particular breeds are dominant breeds, so I would put them in the same category as I would a Rottweiler or a Doberman, again, an Akita, a Pit Bull, dogs that are powerful, and by the very fact that they're powerful, they require a significant amount of leadership in their lives, otherwise they will begin to go down into a very bad place. So I had encouraged her to do that, and I gave her some reminders of what even needed to be done with this particular dog when I first got him. I got him in when he was only 6 months old, and he had already developed a lot of bravado. He would jump on people, he would use his mouth a lot, he would grab onto your legs, even though he was only either 5 or 6 months old. So he already had some issues that we had to sort of work on. So she agreed, she understood. Again, I don't define a breed by its breed, but I do know that there are certain tendencies that each breed has. For example, cattle breeds, Queenslands, Border Collies, Australian Shepherds, those dogs that tend to, they're very intelligent, they need to have a lot of mental stimulus, so on and so forth. And these dominant breed dogs also, they need a lot of leadership. They don't do well in homes where people are really soft with them. So what happened was that they recently moved about 2 months ago. Now this little Chow had only been in her home. That's the only home that he'd known for the last couple of years. So what happens with a move for people and for dogs, cats, anybody? It's stressful. So now he's in this new home, and she had told me that as of a couple of months ago when they moved, that he had developed some new behavior patterns. One of them was that he was more inclined to want to be outside than in the house, which was new for him. He also, rather than hanging out with them in the living room, he wanted to go into a bedroom that was like the guest bedroom where nobody was there. So she understood that he was probably stressed, but she didn't leave it alone. So what happened was, he was in, a couple of nights ago, he was in one of the bedrooms, and she went in there to say goodnight to him. She started petting him, and as he was laying on the floor, head down on the floor, and as she was petting him, she thought she heard something and then realized that he was actually growling at her. She couldn't believe it, so she left well enough alone and went out of the room. The next night, she did the same thing. I know what you're thinking. And she knows what she did wrong now, but once again, she petted him. He started to growl. She interrupted what she was doing and left the room. Then last night, what happened was he decided to come into the room where they were staying, where they were watching TV or just hanging out, she and her husband. He was on the floor, head down on the floor, kind of close to the sofa, and she started petting him. And she petted him for quite a while around the ears and the face, and all of a sudden he just unleashed on her. And as she put it, with no warning. So he grabbed her hand, she pulled her hand away, which of course made the bite worse. Her husband intervened immediately in a very strong way, which was the best thing he could have actually done. He stopped the damage from going any further, and that's the way that the night ended. So when I talked to her this morning, I could totally understand what was happening. What I tried to explain to her was that the fact that, no, this did not happen without warning, that he had gone, and the way he was resolving the conflict that he had of the stress that he was feeling about the move was to go into a separate room. He doesn't have any way of speaking and saying, I'm really stressed out by this. I would prefer to be left alone for a while until I adjust to this new environment. So he would go into that room. But what happens is we tend to become complacent in the things that we know that we should be doing with our dogs. Sometimes when things are going well, we decide, well, we don't have to apply those same rules quite as much anymore. We can probably get away with a few more things. So when she went in and started petting him and he growled, that was his way of saying, I'm not comfortable with this. I went in this room because I wanted to be alone, not because I wanted to be petted. He growled at her. She did stop petting him, but then she went in the very next night and did the same thing again. He had he had no other way of telling her what was going on, except if he had gotten up and walked away, which would have been an option, but it's not the option he chose. He actually decided not to bite her, and when she walked away, he didn't take it any further than that. So you can see how this is playing out. What I wanted to really stress to her is that she has to stay on the same path that she began with him. He's not a bad dog. He's a good dog. He's been very subdued today as a result of what happened last night, and in particular with her husband, because her husband is the one that came in and actually did something about it and pulled the dog off of her. She was terrified that I was going to suggest that she put him down. I'm not going to suggest that. What I'm going to suggest to her, what I told her, was that she needs to make this dog 100% irrelevant to her for a period of time. What she was telling me she was doing in the morning, when she would go into the room and she would ask him if he was ready for breakfast. There's no need for that. Everything needs to be on her terms, her terms and her husband's terms from this point on. It's not up to him when he eats. It's up to her when she decides to prepare the food. So that's one thing that she can do really differently. I told her to just completely avoid giving him affection. I'd reminded her once again that dogs are primates. They don't have arms, they don't have legs, they don't hug and kiss in their own world. That's something that we do, and it has particular significance to us, but it doesn't to a dog. It doesn't matter. I know many of you are listening to that going, oh, it does for my dog. My dog loves affection. Well, they may love affection. They may appreciate the fact that you're scratching around their ears, but the reason that affection exists is because the human is the one that brings it to the table, not the other way around. In all of the animal kingdom, they don't practice the same form of affection that we do. What they follow is leadership. They don't follow love. They don't follow affection. They don't follow softness. They follow strength, leadership, direction. Okay? So she's doing well with him today. She's repeating the mantra that I gave her of irrelevant, irrelevant, irrelevant. But it's really important to understand that when dogs are feeling stressed, they have a particular way of resolving their conflict. He could have chosen a lot of other options. He could have started chewing things up. He could have started peeing in inappropriate places around the property. There's all kinds of things he could have done, but he actually decided that he just wanted to be alone, which is kind of a Chow thing to do. It's not an unusual behavior on the part of a Chow or that type of breed. If she had just left him alone and let him work it out, it would have actually been only a matter of time before he would have started to come around. What I told her, and this is the most important point that I want to make, some of you that have been watching me for a while and watching my videos know how I referred to how shy I was when I was younger. And I grew up in Central America where there was a party every weekend, and I was a good kid, and I hung out with good kids, and we were always allowed to go to these parties, and there was a lot of dancing going on. I wanted to be there. I was social, but I just didn't want anyone pushing in on me. I didn't want somebody relentlessly asking me to dance, even though I wanted to be at this party. And if somebody pursued it too much, I would call my parents and ask them to come and pick me up. I was really shy. I grew out of it, obviously, but I would not have grown out of it if someone had just continued to push me and tried to get me to move forward when I wasn't ready to do so. I needed to grow up a little bit. I needed to develop more confidence. So what I gave her an example of a student that I had here a few years ago. Many of you know who I'm referring to when I talk about my dog, Amber. Amber came from a hoarding situation. She has amazing skills with dogs, but she didn't have good skills with people because she lived with over 200 dogs and an elderly man who had dementia, who I don't even believe knew he had dogs. It was a very horrible situation. It was busted by animal services, and then all of the dogs were placed. Amber had a litter of puppies. I took 2 of the puppies, and my friend Kim Sill took the other puppies and placed them. So this is a dog that was basically feral, but really good with other dogs. So she was trying to come out of her shell, and one of my students was in my backyard, and she was seated, and Amber came around behind her and started to smell her from behind, which is the beginning of breaking the ice, that she was curious enough about this woman that she went around and smelled her. Well, what the student did was turn around immediately and put her hand out, the back of her hand. I don't know where we got that from, but that's something that everybody seems to want to do, which is not a thing that dogs do with each other, for sure. But she went in and immediately moved in on Amber. Amber took off and stayed, kept her distance from this woman in particular for the remainder of the workshop. So that tells you right there that actually what my student did inadvertently set Amber back. It didn't move her forward. The analogy that I used with it was that Amber was ready to put her big toe in the water, but she wasn't ready to swim. And that's a really important thing to understand. Just because a dog comes and smells you, just because a dog approaches you, doesn't mean they're ready for you to touch them, any more than it would for you or I if we decide to approach someone in a social setting or at the grocery store, at the gym or whatever, and strike up a conversation with them. That doesn't mean we want a bear hug. It just means that we're being social and we would like to initiate contact with another person. So you've got to keep that in mind. Any time that we're pushed socially, if somebody gets in our space too much or someone does something inappropriate that makes us feel uncomfortable, it's not going to increase the relationship, it's going to actually make it worse. So keep that in mind the next time you're working with a dog that has issues or is the type of dog that just by his own nature is sort of a stoic breed, a sort of a dog that would rather go off and be on his own and sort of go into a form of avoidance, if that helps you kind of see it differently, rather than go into flight, or rather than just sit and shake or chew something up. Or there's all kinds of options that he could have taken, but that was his form of conflict resolution. So let it be. If eventually, I know he'll come around, I know he'll adjust to the home. She says she's not afraid of him, which is a really good thing. The most difficult part is that she feels like she has to make something up to him. They have to sort of make up. Well, that's also a concept that dogs don't understand any more than they understand timeouts and all the other funny things that we do as humans with our dogs. So just a piece of information that maybe if you're in this situation yourself, or you've been in this situation, or you see something like this brewing, maybe this kind of information will help you. I hope so.